What are you saying, bro? You ready for another lesson?
Man, I can't wait, man. It's been a while, so...
That's a screw.
You can even tell already, you know?
Hey, right rudder, that's it.
Wheel 01, you can backtrack now.
Need to be over the field in between the two.
Alright.
What do you know about increasing the angle of bank?
Full speed.
Exactly.
You're fine, you're on the centre line, and then suddenly you're not, bro.
Next time you're in a grass, bro.
That landing. Whew. I'm worn out.
Are you aiming to be a commercial pilot?
Yes, at some point.
Yes, so these calls, they have to be made in a commercial environment. Well done, mate. You're gonna make a good commercial pilot.
Thank you.
I'll walk up behind the aircraft.
You're very behind the aircraft. We've got a fuel leak. Have we? Yeah.
By the way, go to the whiskey, sorry. The whiskey is quite strong. You're gonna make a good commercial pilot.
You still have control.
No, you tell me when you want to take control. You tell me when you want to take control.
Ever? Do I have to?
Yes. As I say so. Bear in mind, you're going to have to work with what you've got, normally. What do you need?
That's what. I'll make use of what I've got.
Previously on Future Pilot 901.
Okay, how you feeling?
Feeling good?
Good. You're gonna go solo.
Okay. Student Will 08 is ready for departure. We are off.
Student Wheel 08, surface wind is 330 at 9 knots, we've got one to vacate.
Student Will 08.
Charlie Kilo is right base, get out to land. Student Wheel 08, minute takes and well done.
This aircraft is so nice to fly with.
Yeah, very nice.
Victor Golf, Kid 20 Southing Controlled Airspace now in the climb task sheet 3,000 feet, heading 090 degrees.
Yes, 3,000 feet is very nice and smooth.
Yeah.
It's not like in the cloud.
Golf, proceed on location, Sierra November. This comes the procedure report on localized established.
The whole point of getting your IMC is you fly clouds. That's sort of where we are roughly. See?
Okay.
So we came in for an approach on runway 23. We did a missed approach. And now we're being vectored around to do another approach.
Ever since I was a kid, I had a dream of becoming a pilot, but could never afford it. One day I decided to stop making excuses, to sacrifice my comfort, to make my dream happen. My name is Dee, and this is my journey. This is Future Pilot 901. Yes. Let's get rid of that. What's up, people? Aviators, aviation enthusiasts, welcome to Future Pilot 901 Live, the #1 show on YouTube for student pilots. The show is brought to you live every Monday, 7 p.m. British summertime. This is episode number 12. My name is Dee, and I'll be your captain for today. Well, it's another week. Happy Monday, everyone. Do you know what? We made it. Yep. We're still here. We're still alive, kicking, breathing, grifting, trying to get those subscribers, trying to get those subs. Shout out to people in the chat. Shout out to everyone joining the show. I see Joanna. Joanna. Why you gonna do me like Joanna? Joanna. Shout out to you. Hello. I hope you are doing well and are crispy cream on this Monday morning, afternoon, evening, or night, depending on where you are in the world. I'm very, very excited about today's conversation. I'm looking forward to digging down into my flight bag today to talk about some really, really important things. One of the things we've been looking at over the last few episodes is this book, Performance Pilot. And I have to tell you, it's getting real interesting. It's getting very, very interesting. So stick around for the next chapter of that. The Air Accidents Investigation Branch have put out the September bulletin for air accident investigation. So look out for that as well later on in the show. And then, of course, we're going to be joining one of my favorite YouTubers, aviation YouTubers, towards the end of the show, kind of reviewing one of their videos. I haven't watched it, so I always watch it live, and you get unfiltered reaction right in the moment. But before we get on with all of that good stuff, I have to tell you guys something. Over the last week, I fell out with my aunt. Yes, me and my aunt has got beef. We've got beef. Why? Because she was unwell. I went over, trying to be the good nephew that I am, making her proud, becoming a pilot, and she was there from the beginning. In fact, I stayed with her when I was saving up for my private pilot's license. So she saw me during the grinding phases of trying to get my private pilot's license. And she told me she was unwell. And I was like, do you know what? Maybe I'll come see you another day. No, she was like, no. Come and see me. I went over, saw her, it was nice. And then a couple of days later, which was last week, I then got sick. So I was in bed. I was not being productive. I was in bed. So, Auntie, I'm coming to get you. Yeah. I'm beefing my aunt. Yep. I'm beefing my aunt. How dare she get me sick? How dare you? Luckily, I didn't have a flight. How dare you? On balance, to be fair, she did kind of like feed me and take care of me in my younger years when I was a little baby. So Should I forgive her? I don't know. I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about it. Thinking about it. Thinking about it. So last week we talked about what do you do when you're on final and an aircraft cuts you, and somebody in the chat said go around. Yes, go around. If you're not stable, if you're not happy, you're on final critical phase of flight, you're not happy, go around. In theory, that works. But what if that go around goes wrong? What then? Let's have a look. Let's have a wee look, guys. What happens when a go around doesn't go around quite as it should? Check this out. All right. Okay. Unstable. Doing the round out. Okay. With the flare. And go around. Way off the center line. Okay, so in hindsight, I should probably not have started the show on that note. Yes, but go arounds do go wrong. That is the honest truth about it. In fact, if you have ever seen Aviation 101 or flight shops, they deal with the grassroots AQP along with Dan Grider, and they talk about some of the reasons why accidents happen, and messed up go arounds is on the list actually. So it's not just something to take for granted. It really is something to stay on top of, particularly when you're approaching and you got full flaps and you go around, because then you need to retract the drag flaps. That final notch of flaps go from, in a Cessna 152 for example, you'd go from 30 degrees flaps to 20 degrees very quickly, just because in that initial, when you initiate the go around, you're going to have a lot more drag at full flaps, so you're going to need to reduce the flaps, but not too much. So there's like little bits of detail that's happening in the moment, and if your technique is off, then you can quickly find yourself under stress and potentially in the trees, and that's something we definitely want to avoid. So stay sharp with your go around, and in fact later on when we look at this book, when I share the next chapter of this book, there is something in there that I found really, really helpful. So that is to come later on. Okay, so let's see. Damn it, I've got adverts. This is the annoying thing about using videos from YouTube. By the way, so I want to show you guys something because I like sharing. I like sharing. It's nice to share. And I have to say, being in the online aviation community, like, people have been the kindest, the most generous people ever. Like, the nicest people I've ever met are literally pilots. I can say that hand on heart. Next, I would say is therapists. Therapists are some of the nicest people I've met. And where was I going with that? They share. So I'm going to share. That's where I was going with it. I want to share with you. Something that I find very useful, something that I made for myself, because I like building things. I kind of like building things. So I build things that help me. And so I built myself a logbook on a spreadsheet. Why? Because I wanted to have a logbook and a spreadsheet so I don't have to pay for it. All right. I don't want to go to an online logbook thing that I have to pay a subscription to. I've got obviously my hard copy logbook, but in case anything happens to that, I wanted to have a copy of all my flights, my hours, etc., etc. So let me show you what I built. And if you guys find it useful and you'd like me to send you a template, then I'll tell you what to do in just a minute. Let's have a look. Make sure there isn't anything overly personal on the page. I don't have some dodgy things on the screen that I'd rather not let you see. Here we go. All right, this is it. So I've literally built it to be exactly like this good old logbook. So on that page, as you can see, I've got one entry, and guess what? I'll show you. On here, I've got one entry on this page, right? So everything literally matches page for page, is how I've done it. I don't know if anyone else does that kind of thing, but I decided to. And as you can see, I've got formulas that count everything. So that's my total takeoffs, my total landings, my total PIC hours, and then the PIC hours just from this page, my total dual hours. And then what I've got on this side is the page totals, right? So I've got the totals for this page, and then I've got grand totals for everything. So as you can see here, I've got 119 hours, 21 minutes, dual time, 38 hours, solo time, 80 hours, and this cross country, 61 of those 80 hours are cross country flights. So that makes what? Quick maths, 29 hours. Is that 29 hours in the circuit, basically? Yeah. I lie. 19 hours in the circuit. And the rest of it is cross-country flights. So if that's the kind of thing that you would find useful, obviously, if you mess it up, I might not be able to help you. Yeah, so it's just gonna have to be one of those. But if you'd like a copy of one of these, then let me know in the chat and I'll tell you what to do. Let me know in the chat and I will tell you what to do. So I've got, yeah, all of these, page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, all that corresponds to my actual logbook. I'm up to page 9. Why am I celebrating that? Because there was a time when I was struggling to fill up one page on my logbook. And I remember those days. And sometimes when you're in those moments, you think it's going to last forever. You think you're always going to struggle for hours. But that's not true. Nothing stays the same forever. Things change. And I'm grateful, very grateful to be on this side of my license and filling up logbook pages. Right. Enough chit chat. Let's get on with the show. Let's get this show started. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Right. I had a question come up on one of actually the last episode. So let's have a look. Somebody commented a question on the last episode, and I like to answer questions. So if you've got questions, hit me up. Let me know, and I will be happy to answer your question. Let's have a look. See. What are you wanting to know? Right. David Cassidy here drops a comment, says, are you a commercial pilot or a commercial pilot in training? Okay, am I a commercial pilot or a commercial pilot in training? David, it's none of your business. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm joking, David. Chill. I know you just subscribed to the channel, so shout out to the new subscribers, by the way. We're 2 away from 500. If you're watching this show and you're not subscribed, what are you doing with your life? Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button as well for this episode. Share it if you like. There's definitely going to be nuggets for you to share. But back to the question, am I a commercial pilot or am I a commercial pilot in training? Well, I am a commercial pilot in training, but I'm also I hold a PPL, a private pilot's license. I try not to say I'm a private pilot because that makes people think like you've got private client flying private jets. That's not what it means. Having a private pilot's license means you're able to fly, but you cannot get paid. So basically, it's a license that is used to build up experience before you go commercial, right? It's a license that allows you to just fly for fun if that's what you wish to do, and that's as far as you want to go. So yes, my plan is to eventually get into an airline in the future. So right now I've got private pilot's license. I'm building up my hours. Then I'm going to take some exams and do the commercial course and become commercially certified. So that is where I am. That's obviously described, maybe not obvious to some of you, but that is the modular route, right? Why do I mention those two things? That one, I've got a private pilot's license, and two, I am a commercial student, because it's possible to be a commercial student without a private pilot's license. If you do an integrated course, which is basically full-time study for say 18 months, you actually don't necessarily do the private pilot's license. You just go straight into commercial training and airline transport pilot's license training. And so yeah, I'm quite happy that I've got a private pilot's license. It means I can fly with friends, family, and really just enjoy my hour building. And if you have not checked out the YouTube channel, make sure you check it out, because I've been having fun doing things like, where is it? I've been having fun doing things like this. Have a look. I've always loved flying.
Hello. On the radar. Come on. Well done.
And dancing, there's no denying. If only I could blend the two. I know what I'll do. I'll fly to a new place to dance with a new face. Enjoying the wings a private pilot license brings.
That was a little bit gusty.
Just made a no-fly decision.
Squawk on switch duty, 3 shore.
A different way to our build and advance.
2-0, joy and downwind.
I call it fly to dance.
4 flaps. Ooh, nice one. Flaps come up. Well, flight, man.
Foxtrot Sierra, welcome to shore.
We have everything in this flight, man. Everything, bro.
Yes. So if you haven't watched the Fly to Dance series, make sure you check it out. There are 3 episodes out there. I'm working on episode number 4. I was out. Actually, no, I wasn't out. I was in editing this weekend. So it's very, very nearly there. So hang on tight. If you've not watched the episodes, by the time you finish watching it, episode 4 will be ready. So check that out on the Future Pilot 901 YouTube channel. Alrighty. Let's get down to beeswax. AAIB is the Air Accidents Investigation Bureau. Oh gosh, it's taken me a number of episodes to actually remember that acronym. So I'm very, very happy with that. Air Accidents Investigation Bureau has put out the September Bulletin. Bullet. Let's have a look. There are a few things, and remembering why we look at these things. One of the things that I love about aviation is this openness to kind of exploring, finding out what went wrong, right? We don't do that on the roads. Think about each accident, what went wrong, and how we can, improve on, our performance as drivers. But we do that as pilots, and I really actually value that. So there are a couple of stories, a couple of investigations that took place that have been published. So let's have a look at what is out there. Now, that is, as you can see, AAIB Bulletin, and I guess it's kind of the equivalent of the NTSB in America. And they cover, okay, so commercial transport, commercial air transport, there were none. That's good. Rotorcraft, none. General aviation, there was fixed wing. Okay, I think okay, field investigation. Oh, my bad. My bad. Right. Correspondence investigations there. Record only investigation. Now, do I know what any of this means? Not necessarily, but that's why I'm here. I'm here to learn. This is part of my accountability to make sure I look at the documents I'm supposed to be looking at. So we've got a few in the general aviation section. So let's shimmy on to that bit of the document. Shimmy on, shimmy. Let's have a look. What does this aircraft look like? We like to work with images. That is probably an image of this incident. Have a look. That is the aircraft in question. That is the aircraft in question. Looks lovely. Tail wheel. And let's have a look. Let's have a look here. I suspect this March 2025. Okay, I suspect that's gone, isn't it? So let's have a look at what happened to this aircraft. So this aircraft is a I don't know how to say this. Druin? Can somebody correct me in the chat? Is that how you say it? Druin? D62B Condor, which is Reg Golf Alpha X-Ray Golf Victor. And let's see. Accident happened the 20th of March 2025. So that matches up. 11:48 at Croft Airfield, North Yorkshire. There was one crew, one passenger. So one pilot, one passenger. The pilot was seriously injured. The passenger also seriously injured. The aircraft was destroyed. The pilot's certification was a private pilot's license, age 66. He or she had 1,288 hours in total, of which one were on type. Interesting. Last 90 days, 2 hours. Last 28 days, 1 hour. Interesting. So just going to have a quick look at this, right? It's a pretty short one anyway. The accident occurred on the approach to landing during... What is this? Man, English is not my first language. Why are you giving me some... How do you even pronounce that? Let's see. Biennial. Okay. I just learned something new. Biennial. Let's go. Let's go. Biennial. I don't know why you guys are looking at me like that, because half you guys didn't even know what that meant. So, at least I'm honest about it. Right, let's go back to this. So the accident occurred on the approach to land during a biennial revalidation flight. That's okay. Move on. My brain is getting stuck on that word because I'm like, I've never seen that word. Anyhow, like I said, English is not my first language. So it was a flight for the pilot flying who was unfamiliar with the aircraft and the farm strip. The instructor was experienced with both the aircraft type and the farm strip. After completing some general handling, the aircraft was flown back to the strip for a touch and go runway 27 with a forecast 5 to 10 knot crosswind from the left. The approach was made from the right-hand circuit. The pilot was used to flying a biplane, so he decided to fly a curved tailwheel approach. What is a curved tailwheel approach? If we're going to have a look at this, we might as well figure out what exactly it's saying instead of like glazing it over and just nodding along as if I know what's happening. Let me see if I can see an image of what a curved tailwheel approach is. Curved tailwheel approach. Okay, so this is probably the best thing I can find. Right, that looks like curved tailwheel approach, right? Something like that, maybe. I don't know, or maybe not, because that's not even a tail wheel. Don't know what I'm talking about. Try that again. There we go. Got our sound back. All right. So if anyone knows what a curved tailwheel approach is, drop it in the chat. Let me know. But let's switch back. So he decided to fly a curved tailwheel approach. As the aircraft descended below the tops of trees on the left of the approach of the runway, it started to drift towards the trees. The pilot flying turned the aircraft away from the trees, but one of the wings stalled. Okay, so we're talking about when the greater your bank angle, the more wing loading, the higher your stall speed is. So clearly this must have caught them out somehow. Okay, so it stalled, which rolled and pitched the aircraft nose down. The stalled wing hit the ground, followed by the nose, before the aircraft came to rest upside down in this fashion. Once the aircraft was made safe, as safe as possible, they released themselves from their full harnesses. The pilot flying crawled out of the aircraft via the rear left window and lifted the wing sufficiently for the instructor to exit the aircraft. They then called for assistance from the emergency services. Although an initial assessment suggested they had sustained only minor injuries, further assessment at hospital found that both had suffered a neck vertebra injury or fracture. Right. So, yeah, always not great hearing things like this. I wish them well. I hope they are recovering. I hope they're going to make a full recovery, or at least, with minimal long-term issues. But definitely something to learn from this. Obviously, I'm not going to presume to know everything. I'm still, at the beginning of my journey. But definitely approach to land is a very tricky thing. And as we saw, you can say, oh, this is not going too well, I'm going to go around. But if your go around technique is poor, then that's not going to help. So you need to be on top of go around technique, and also be aware of these things. I think a couple of episodes ago, we read about a pilot who was also doing a grass landing, and they got tunnel visioned into the approach speed, that they were unaware of everything else, and they ended up basically landing in a field short of the strip, and then they attempted to go around, hit a hedge, and basically had an accident. So yeah, these kind of accidents do happen, and it's a reminder to not be complacent, you know, because sometimes we can kind of develop that hazardous attitude, you know, where we kind of think, yeah, that will never happen to me. I can do this. Like, I don't make mistakes like that. Yeah. Last time we read about somebody who started the engine and had the throttle open too much, and they lost control as soon as they started the engine. There it was moving forward, and it crashed into a building nearby. Imagine if somebody had been just, you know, walking around in front of the aircraft. It was not under the pilot's control. So these accidents do happen. It's so important not to be complacent. I say this out loud, but really I'm speaking to myself, you know. I'm speaking to myself, and I hope it's useful to you. Actually, it is useful to you. I'll tell you that for free. I used to run training every now and then. I still run training. I used to run training in a school for it doesn't really matter, it's not really relevant, but just in case you're curious, because I know there are curious minds out there, positive physical handling, so just techniques on how to actually move a young person or a person when for their own safety, when all other strategies fail. And a lot of the times, especially in environments where there's so much training, I saw it. People develop the attitude that, you know, I've been trained to my eyeballs. Somebody actually said that to me. They were like, I've been trained up to my neck. I've been trained to my eyeballs. I guess there's no more training to give you then. Like, you have reached the pinnacle of all knowledge when it comes to this subject. But as we know, as human beings, that's not really how it works, right? It's not really how it works. And what I said to them, and how I like to think about it, is what if somebody came up to you and said, do you know what? I spent 20 years brushing my teeth twice a day, every day. Now, I mean, I've brushed my teeth up to my eyeballs. Now I don't need to brush my teeth. Do you know what? Showers, my body, do you know how many hours I've clocked having showers? My body doesn't need it anymore, right? You'd look at them like, are you okay? No matter how clean you are, just living life is going to get you sweaty, is going to get you dirty, is going to build up bacteria in your mouth, and you're going to need to redo it, refresh it, right? And so that's how I think about training. It's another opportunity, or reminders. They're another opportunity to just refresh everything and get yourself back hygienic, back to being hygienically attractive. I just made that up right now. Hygienically attractive. Yep. That's what I'm rolling with. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Right. Let's have a look at one more. Uno más from this tab. Okay, so actually this I was curious about. Let's have a look, see if we can see what it looks like. Bosch. Ooh, I would not mind this. Hey, if somebody has some extra money left over, would you mind just, you know, I'm not asking for much, but, you know, like this Christmas, all I want for Christmas is this. Right? So, hey, look, guys, if any of you wants to get me an aircraft, this is, yeah, feel free. Seriously, I will not hold it against you. I will forgive you for doing me such a solid. All right. So that's what it looks like. Apparently, it's a Piper PA-46. And what happened to it? Let's have a look. So Piper PA-46, 350P. It's got a November registration, which is the American registration. It's got one Pratt & Whitney PT6A35 engine. Year of manufacture is 2005. And the accident happened on 18th of May, 2025, about 7:30 p.m. Location was Kilkeel, Greencastle Airfield, County Down. The type of flight was private, one crew, 3 passengers. So 1 pilot and 3 passengers. Injuries, no one was injured, but there was substantial damage to wing and parts of fuselage. Commander's license, they had a commercial pilot's license. Age 44, and the hours of experience, they had 2,512 hours of experience, of which 656 were on this particular type, the Piper PA-46. Now, I'm just going to read the synopsis and, the synopsis. The pilot lost sight of the runway centerline on rotation, with the aircraft drifting to the left and the wheels entering long grass next to the Moan runway strip. Gosh, I really struggle with English. Give me a second, guys. Give me a second. Okay. Where are we? There we are. Cool. So yeah, on rotation, the wheels are entering the long grass next to the Moan runway strip. He was able to recover directional control. He was unable, to recover directional control, and the aircraft hit an adjacent hedge and earth bank, causing considerable damage. The good thing is there were no injuries. That is the good thing, thankfully. History of the flight. So the pilot, together with 3 passengers, had planned to fly from Kilkeel Airfield in Northern Ireland to Fair Oaks near London. Actually, I just flew from Fair Oaks a couple of weeks ago, where the aircraft was based. Kilkeel Airfield has a single grass runway, which the airfield's website states is 750 meters long and 5 meters wide. Whoa, that is some narrow runway. Just to give you a bit of a context on that, I fly from North Weald, right? And North Weald is like 50 meters wide? I believe so, if I remember my dimensions correctly. It's about 1,800 meters long and about 50 meters wide. That is a tenth of that. So that is crazy. Okay, so I can kind of see that if I was doing this flight, drifting off the center line would definitely be part of my threat and error management, right? Because, or at least it would be now, having read this and seen this investigation, this accident. Yeah, it definitely would be now. Because if you've only got 5 meters wide, that's crazy. So my span is probably about just under 2 meters. Actually, let's just say 2 meters. So double my span and one more, right? And a half. Double my span and a half. My wingspan. That's crazy. That is tiny. That is tiny. Right. The pilot reported the grass on either side of the runway strip as being very long. He described a dashed line down the runway to delineate the center line, but no markings along the edge of the strip. The Moan area opened out approximately halfway. along the length of the runway to allow access to aircraft for parking and refueling. The pilot stated he had started his takeoff run from runway 19 with the aircraft performing as expected. He commenced rotation just prior to the start of the wider moan area and believes the aircraft had then yawed slightly to the left. The aircraft had just become airborne when the strip narrowed again, with the left main gear entering the long grass along the edge. This caused the aircraft to decelerate and yaw rapidly to the left, with all three wheels contacting the ground again. The aircraft continued to yaw to the left despite the pilots applying right rudder, and decelerated as it passed through the long grass. The pilot was unable to prevent the aircraft from hitting an adjacent hedge and earth bank, which broke off part of the wing and caused substantial damage to the fuselage. The passenger compartment, however, remained intact, and the pilot and passengers were able to exit unaided and uninjured through the main exit. The pilot commented that on rotation, the long nose of the aircraft obstructed his view forwards, and this coincided with a loss of peripheral guidance caused by the strip widening out into the parking area. This made it an increasing challenge to maintain directional control in an aircraft which produced significant torque on takeoff. He stated that in hindsight, he should have rotated later to maintain better visual awareness of his position relative to the centerline. Despite being experienced at flying to grass runways, the pilot also stated he would restrict his flying to those with wider cleared strips in the future. Well, you know, that's the main thing, isn't it? It's all about learning from the experience, and it sounds like, you know, they have learned from that experience, and that's the most important thing. They have learned from that experience. Well, folks, that wraps up this week's air accident investigation. Oh gosh, I've forgotten it again. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. Air Accidents Investigation Branch Bulletin. There we go. Well, folks, that wraps up this week's Air Accidents Investigation Branch Bulletin from September 2025. There's one more, but we might look at that next week. I'm saving some for later. Speaking of later on, if you're interested, you could find yourself watching me make a complete fool of myself. Now, I'm sure you're curious as to what I mean, and this is exactly what I mean.
Will 01, is that Bravo 1? Bravo 1, we'd like to back up to the RP, please.
Bullet 01, nothing to affect your backtrack to RP.
Roger, backtracking, Will 01.
Well, you knew what you meant.
Yes, that was back when I was doing my PPL training. And yes, we make mistakes. We all do. We make mistakes. And you would be making a mistake if you didn't get yourself one of these free hats. You got the classic Live Your Dream hat, the cool blue Live Your Dream hat, and my personal favorite, the white Live Your Dream hat. And you could get yourself one of these, or you can be put into a draw for one of these by entering the words Live Your Dream onto the chat, and your handle, your name will be put into a draw that is to be done next month, the first episode of next month. So do not make that mistake. Get yourself in with a chance to win one of these hats. I've got ideas on a new design, but I kind of need to work on it. If you're out there, you got design skills, you'd like to work with me to produce a new updated Future Pilot 901 hat or t-shirt as well, I'll be happy to work with you. Hit me up. Let's collab. How do you hit me up? Well, there you go. That's how you hit me up. Let me know and we can make business happen. All right. Well, now we move on to the portion of the show where we discuss Performance Pilot. Now, before I take you into this week's chapter, I actually made something. I've been kind of reviewing the material so far and just thinking about how I wanted to capture it. So I came up with this. You guys let me know what you think of this. Let's have a look. Wait. Shout out to Canva. Take my money every month. Thank you for your service. But yes, so here is what I've been building for myself as a way to remember these things. So you got how the pilot's mind works, which is one of the chapters, 3 keys to improving faster processing, quality time, quality programming rather, and quality input. And then the section on the brain that we covered some weeks ago, where it talks about the right hemisphere deals with creativity, intuition, art, and big picture. Left hemisphere deals with details, language, maths, and logic. And the key is to get both sides of your brain working together, right? To be a pilot, you need both sides working together. And the exercises are cross crawl, which is right hand touching left knee, left hand touching right knee, so that you're getting your brain working, because the right side of your brain controls the left side of your body, and the left hemisphere controls the right side of your body. So if you cross, anything you do that goes across requires the two sides to communicate. And so you can dial up that communication by doing so. Then you got head-eye motion, where you turn your head from side to side with your eyes going the opposite way. Then you got your lazy eights, where you follow your thumb. You do it left arm, right arm, and both. And then centering, which is about putting pressure on the back, on the roof of your mouth, behind your teeth, and relaxing your body so that you can be calm and cool when making little adjustments to the controls when you're taking off, or maybe when you're landing, so that you can nail that go around technique, or maybe even so that you don't drift from the center line of the runway. So I just wanted to let you guys know what I'm doing. I'm working on that. It's still a work in progress. And it's useful to kind of leave it a few weeks to then capture a chapter, because then it requires me to remember. As we know, forgetting is actually an important part of remembering, right? Because if you have to forget it, if you forget it and you're having to recall it, then you're really bringing it out of your long-term memory. You're really building those neural pathways to that information. So it's actually useful to forget it and then have to remember it. Now, learning. That's the new chapter. As you can see, I mark all my books. I don't know if I would pass it on or if I can resell it, but I mark all my books, generally speaking. I just like to think how I think, and I think I want to mark my books. And so that's what I do. Now, this chapter is on learning. A lot of the time, we can focus so much on what we want to learn that we don't stop to think about the actual process of learning, right? Because if you can grasp the process of learning and you can improve how you approach learning, then what you learn or how quickly you learn the what becomes, well, it becomes an improvement, right? It becomes a more interesting endeavor, because now you're refining your process of learning rather than just learning, right? So there's some really interesting things that were mentioned here, and I'll draw a couple of them and maybe share a couple of stories from my own journey. And maybe if you've got any things that comes up for you, drop in the chat. I do read the chat, and I will highlight your message and show it to everybody as well. So don't hold back, guys. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. I don't bite, I promise. At least not before midnight. Now, if I see you after midnight, now that's a different story. Before midnight, I don't bite. And this podcast or this show does not go as far as midnight. So you're safe. You're safe this time. This time. Right. Let's see. Here's the first quote. Without a plan, one of two things will happen. Either no change and improvement will take place, or the wrong changes will take place. Right? So it makes the point that it's so important to have a plan, on, how you want to improve, on the progress that you want to make. And if you don't make that, if it's not something that you do consciously, then you will flop. Very interestingly, they mention the stages, learning stages. I'll show it to you guys, which I found very interesting. One of the things I really love about reading is when somebody writes a book, right? They can't just wake up one day and just kind of slap a few words together. It has to be really thought out. Otherwise, they will probably struggle to get a publisher. They'll probably struggle to get forwards, right? And this book has squadron leader, lieutenant colonel, Airbus captain on the A320, former RAF C-130 Hercules captain. So for you to kind of really have something that is co-signed by others, and something that a publisher finds useful, and for your book sales to do well, it really has to be refined. It's not like a blog. It's not like a live stream, right? It requires some refining. And so what I find useful about looking at books is it gives you the language, structures, sometimes to things that you already know. But just having the language allows you, because once you can describe something more explicitly, you can then step away from it and actually look at it. But as long as you can't describe something, you can't fully examine it, right? So being able to describe something is so powerful. And so that's what I find useful to, for example, have the learning stages. So number one is unconscious incompetence. Let's try that again. Unconscious incompetence. That's basically the stage where you don't know what you don't know, right? Maybe you're flying and you don't even know what mistake you're doing. You're not aware of how you're performing. So it's unconscious and you are incompetent, right? The next stage is then you become conscious incompetent, right? Which means that you're now aware of where you're lacking. You're now aware that, oh, it's my flare that's, not quite right. The rate of like flaring is too much or too little. Oh, do you know what? It's my turns that I'm not actually maintaining altitude like I'm supposed to. You're now aware of your area of incompetence. So you go from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence. And then you put the practice in. But it requires you to be conscious. It requires you to be very, purposeful, very intentional, right? Which leads to the third stage of learning, conscious competence. So now you're competent, but you have to be conscious, right? If you don't pay attention, you will drift back into your old mistakes. So you have to be conscious in how you do it. And if you put in enough practice over and over again, you then go to stage number 4, which is unconscious competence, where now you don't even really have to think about it. Now you've embodied that improvement, right? So you go from not knowing what mistakes you're even making, and not knowing what you don't know, to knowing what you don't know, to improving consciously, and then to being able to do it unconsciously. So I found that really useful way to look at it. And I've actually found myself thinking, okay, now I'm consciously incompetent. And the good thing about that is sometimes we think, you can be in a situation where you're messing something up, and you kind of have this voice in the back of your head kind of saying, is this ever going to get better? Like, are you ever going to improve on this? Right. And I've met people as well. I've heard a lot of people talk like that, I'm just so bad at this, man. It's just my landings are not that good, man. It's like, my flight planning it's not good, man. Right. So you're in a place of conscious incompetence, and there's other stages, just keep going. So I find it useful because in a way it makes me hopeful. But the book suggests stage 5, right? It suggests a stage 5, which is unconscious competence. So you're good without necessarily conscious thought, where now it's embodied, it's second nature, but with awareness, right? Where you have a conscious awareness. So even though you're good, or you've learned the skill and you can now do it second nature, there's a part of you that kind of watches over yourself to make sure that, oh, wait, I didn't quite do that well. Okay, let me go back and improve on that, right? So you're not plateauing. So that was a pretty cool wording I found. Now, there's different ways to learn. And a lot of this, and then I'll come to the gold. There was actually one bit that is the golden part, and they say that bit, if you were to take one thing from the book, it'll be that bit that's coming up next. So there's a couple of different ways to learn. Learning from the inside out. And this is really useful, especially when we're trying to teach people. There is learning from the inside out. The information, I'm looking at a book, the information's outside of me, I'm trying to learn it, right? Cool. Sorry, my bad. Learning from the outside in is the first one, right? Learning from the outside in, it's external, and I'm trying to get it in. And then there's learning from the inside out, which is where the light bulb happens. So it doesn't matter how much you explain something to somebody, until it clicks with them, it never really makes sense, right? But when we have that light bulb moment, when we learn from the inside, where inside our mind we connect the dots, like, it's really hard to forget those lessons. Really hard to forget. In fact, I'll damn near say it's impossible to forget it, right? Because it's just, the lights go on and it's like, great. Another way to learn is through osmosis, right? So here's an interesting thing that happened. Tennis coaches in England have noticed for years a direct correlation between their students' ability and the television coverage of Wimbledon. For a couple of weeks immediately following the tournament, tennis players' performances improved significantly. Did they practice more, change their swing, or buy a new tennis racket? No, they simply learned by watching. All pilots learn through osmosis, the process of unconscious assimilation of skills or knowledge. The more exposure, the more they learn. And that is exactly what I found when I was watching videos of flying lessons during PPL training. And even now, we're watching videos, we're reading stuff, we're learning by exposure. And sometimes I have the opportunity to support student pilots who are working on their PPL. And that's one of my biggest bits of advice. Expose yourself. The more you expose yourself, the more you can learn without even trying, just being in the environment. So what I used to do is I would take myself to an airfield and just be there, right? Or if somebody invites you to fly with them, just be there, right? Because you're just going to pick up, and you're going to pick things up without trying to. Because sometimes when you're consciously studying something, when you're consciously working on something, there's a lot more pressure that you put on yourself, or at least I put on myself. And so it's like, okay, I need to learn this. There's a necessity, there's a pressure, there's a countdown timer, right? Whereas when you just expose yourself, you're just learning all these things without even trying to, without the stress, without the pressure. You're just picking it up. So, if you just expose yourself, if you know you're going to be doing, let's say, instrument lessons, right? You're going to be doing your instrument rating sometime in the future. If you just expose yourself to YouTube videos of people doing instrument approaches, like, you're just going to pick up things without even trying, right? So if you want to get yourself to learn things, how can you expose yourself with whatever you're trying to learn now? How can you increase your learning through exposure? What could you do to expose yourself to it so that you're learning even without trying? So that you're like those tennis players who watch Wimbledon and suddenly their performances improve. What could you do right now that will allow you to learn just from exposure? I'll wait. Now, if your answer was that you would watch Future Pilot 901 Season 2, then you are correct. Let's go. Let's go. Yes, that's how you can learn, by exposing yourself. You can learn unconsciously. Nah, I joke. I tease. I joke. I tease. Yeah, depending on what you're learning, obviously it will relate to that, but find ways of exposing yourself, to whatever it is, so that, you can kind of flatten your learning curve a little bit. Now, that brings me to the golden egg of this book, which is the learning formula. Now, this is actually quite powerful, and it seems very simple. And sometimes the most powerful things are simple, but it's really powerful, just the way it's been put forward. So what is the learning formula? That's it. Mental imagery plus awareness equals goal. Mental imagery plus awareness equals goal. Mental imagery plus awareness equals goal. Okay. Now, what is that saying? Let's have a read of this section as we wrap up our review of this chapter. An example more relevant to a student pilot would be the G, goal of establishing a consistent flare height. Your instructor would be able to provide you with the actual flare height required and the visual cues you would expect to see from the correct seating position inside the cockpit. The facts provided by your instructor provide you with information needed to create the images before beginning the mental imagery sessions, MI. With the beginning of the performing actual landing comes awareness. After each landing, you would assess the actual flare height compared to the ideal flare height. When you are just starting out, your instructor could help you with this part. Now, here's the key. If a pilot has a clear mental image and awareness of what they're doing right now, their mind will bring the two together. You may be surprised at how rare it is for a pilot to have both of these components, mental imagery and awareness, come together. It's quite rare, or at least more rare than you'd expect. Some may have a clear mental image of what they want to accomplish, but no awareness of what they're currently doing. Others do not have a mental image of what they mostly want because they are overly aware of what they're currently doing. They're so focused on what they're doing wrong, they can't get the mental image of what they want. Now, it's when I think of that, the image that comes to my mind is when you're at the party, right? And there's somebody who is right in the middle of the dance floor in front of everyone, and they're just like, now they have an image probably in their minds of like the cool moves that they're trying to do, but no awareness. Like, this part of their body is doing its own thing, that part of the body is doing its own thing, their neck and their head is doing its own thing. It's like the awareness of what's actually happening within their body in that moment is non-existent, right? Or like described, somebody who just go, I keep, like my technique is bad, my technique is bad, my technique is bad. Like, oh no, I'm not a good dancer. It's like they're so aware of what they're doing wrong, like how bad they are at dancing, but they have no like mental image of what they're aiming for, of what a good dancing move for them would look like. All right. Back to flying. Very important. And I've been practicing my mental imagery sessions as well over the last week and a bit. And it's just so important to bring those two together, where you can imagine the perfect landing. And then when you are performing a landing, you can also be aware of, wait, okay, I shifted off the center line a little bit there. Okay, I applied too much rudder. Okay, I didn't use my cross controls. All right, so you can hold the image of your perfect landing and the awareness of what you're doing, which then allows you to adjust. And once those two work together, boom, you achieve your goal. So whenever you are working on something, if you ever find yourself kind of stuck, I think it's a useful, or I think for me, it's a useful thing to come back to this and think, okay, cool. Let me examine my mental imagery. Do I actually have the correct mental image of what I'm supposed to do? Or am I not even imagining it correctly, right? So I had an issue with grass landings at one point. And I had to go back to an instructor because I had to be like, I have to get my mental imagery right. Like, I need to be able to imagine my soft fill technique perfectly. Right. And that's an emphasis in this book where it's they play on the saying practice makes perfect. And they say, no, perfect practice makes perfect. Right. So your image in your mind of what you're trying to do has to be perfect. And sometimes you need to go back to a book, you need to go back to an instructor to reconstruct the mental imagery, right? Okay, cool. I can't do it yet, right? Because now I'm conscious incompetent, right? I can't do it yet, but I can imagine it. Cool. And then what you need is the awareness of what you're doing. So either you're messing up on the mental imagery or you're messing up on the awareness. And what you need to work on is being more aware in the moment. So what you might do is, for example, have some of these placed strategically to improve your awareness, right? You might do a flight sim session and put a note here to say, eyes to the end of the runway, right? Because whenever you get to landing, you're so kind of caught up in the moment that you lose awareness of what you need to do. So you can put little triggers, little things like that to kind of help you build your awareness. Obviously, flying with an instructor helps build your awareness, but you need those two. And if you're not making progress, check, do you have the correct mental imagery of what you're supposed to do? And if you do you have the awareness of in the moment what you are doing? All right. So I think for me, it's a useful diagnostic tool. And then also remembering that those are different learning curves, learning progression, right? Progress doesn't always look like that. Progress could be like that, right? And that's something I've experienced. When I did my skills test, flying with my instructor, like beautiful. Then got my license. About 20, 30 hours in, I took a dip. Everything took a dip. Maybe I was approaching it differently. I was. But also, it's just sometimes part of the journey. It's just sometimes part of the journey and the process, because you've gone from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence to conscious competence to unconscious competence. So now it's unconscious again. So then, but there might be things that need to be worked on and improved. So now I have to go back again and restart the cycle and like update my mental images on certain techniques, because now I'm having to apply a technique, but in a different condition, right? Or a slightly different aircraft or a slightly different airfield with a narrower strip that is only 5 meters wide. So then I need to update the mental imagery. So then my performance takes a dip. And so it happens. And you have to be, well, if you're going to make progress, you have to be patient in the dips. You have to be patient through the dips. And if you are, and you keep going back to improving the mental image, having your awareness and coordinating those two, it's only a matter of time until you improve. So, obviously, if you want to get yourself the book, Performance Pilot, Skills, Techniques, and Strategies to Maximize Your Flying Performance. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. The next chapter is on self-coaching, which we will be looking at next week. That wraps up this week's roundup of Performance Pilot. That wraps that up for this week. Doke. Well, it's nearly time to have a look at some of our favorite aviation YouTubers. Let's have a look. Says number one fan. Thank you. Appreciate you. Shout out to you. Thank you for passing by. Shout out to you. Thank you. Guys, we are literally, I'll check again. I think we are 2 subscribers. No, let's go. Okay, I can announce proudly that we are 1 subscriber away from 500 subs. Let's go. Let's go. Yes, come on, come on. I'm sure there's somebody watching right now that is not subscribed. So why don't you hit that subscribe button? Whilst you're at it, hit the like button if you're on YouTube. Obviously, if you're on Kick, then just follow on Kick, and that way you get updates on the next shows. But thank you. Seriously, you guys literally make my dream come true. Obviously, if you have any requests, drop it in the chat. I'll be happy to consider it. This is the time for you guys to get them requests in, right? Because while I'm still small and I don't have a team of people and you can directly get to me. Now, how long is it going to take to get that team of people and like blow up? I have no clue. It will happen what happens. When does a child walk? When the child walks. When does a child talk? When the child talks. It will happen when it happens. My job is to be consistent. And so far, it's been 12 weeks of consistency. 12 weeks of consistency. Speaking of consistency, you can consistently watch me getting through my pilot training. Like, oh.
Nice takeoff.
That's a screw. I was waiting for that because everyone does it.
I'm gonna make sure that you can do it. And you can do it, I know.
Gonna get to the height of a double-decker bus.
How about this height?
Smoothly throttle to idle. Smoothly raise the nose.
This is floating. It's floats.
Yes, man. Good food after hard days of flying, bro.
Bro, it's needed, man. That landing. Woo. I'm worn out.
Yes. If you've never watched Future Pilot 901 Season 2 or Season 1 for that matter, feel free to watch those, particularly if you're a student pilot working on your PPL. Remember, you can learn unconsciously. It's entertaining. I try to make it all entertaining. So it's entertaining and you're learning at the same time without the pressure of having a lesson. So you can just pick up these things, and then when you are with an instructor, you know, some things are just built into your mental programming already. That's available on the YouTube channel Future Pilot 901. So if you're in Kick and you want to watch those previous videos, because Kick deletes videos after 30 days, so I don't have my whole thing, all my videos on Kick, but they are on YouTube. All right, let's have a look. 38 hours, first solo nav done, 2 exams left, radio license. Should I stop flying and do exams or press forward for the QXE or QXC? All right, so let's have a look at this. 38 hours in, first solo nav done. Do you know what? Do you know what that deserves? You deserve applause, man. You deserve applause. Well done to you. Well done to you. That's really good progress. 2 exams left and RT exam left as well. Should I stop flying and do exams or press forward for the QXC? What do you guys think? Any thoughts in the chat or in the comments? Okay, so I'm usually good at answering questions, but I'm having a tough time answering this question. And I think because there are many, many variables. I'll give you one example. Um, you know, like some people say, save up money and then do your flight training. Now, I'm not a saver, I'm a spender, right? So I had to learn how I function, right? And make it work for me. So I said, okay, I'm a spender. So instead of me trying to save money to eventually do my PPL after like 2 years, I'll probably end up spending that money on something else. So let me just start spending it on flight training right now. Right. And so that meant I had to do lessons and have, a month gap between each lesson. Sometimes my instructor and I used to joke, like she would say, Sabina, she's in the most recent videos in season 2. After each lesson, she'd be like, okay, I guess I'll see you next year. Right. Like that's how, like, that was my pattern. Right. But I found a way to make it work. But if I said to myself I was going to save up to then do it all at once, that probably would not have happened. So I think it really depends on how you function, because really you can go either way. Should you stop? So option 1 is stop the flying and focus and get the exams done. How close are you to doing the exams? Because if you're pretty close to doing the exams and your radio telephony exam as well, that's going to be similar to what you're already doing in the nav. So actually it might go hand in hand for you to keep flying, use those nav skills alongside your RT skills, which you then get to apply in your RT exam. Right. So it comes down to the details. Personally, if there was a way I could keep, I would say ideally keep flying, unless that's going to stop you. If you're, for example, you've got quite a bit to do on the exams, and you could be ready for your skills test before you finish your exams, which is going to delay your skills test, then I would say take a pause, finish the exams. Also, another thing that is something to consider, once you pass your first exam, you then have 18 months, not 18 months. You then have, is it 18 months? No, once you pass the first exam, you got 18 months to complete all exams. Right? So then you have to be aware, is that 18-month deadline coming up? If it is, then you might need to really focus on the exams. But if you've got plenty of time left in that, then you don't need to rush the exams. So there's some variables here, depending on what your personal values are and what your preferences are. But I would say if you can, keep flying and do the lessons to the side. But if that gets in the way and is going to cause you to ultimately spend more money, then it's maybe worth taking a short break and getting the exams done. I hope that's useful, but as I said, it requires a lot more kind of pieces that I don't have, so it's hard to give specific advice not knowing more details. But that, I think, is the best I can do with the information given. But thank you for your question. As always, people can just chuck your questions into the chat. If I can answer them, I'll answer them. If I can't, I'll be honest about it, because we might as well be honest with each other, right? If we're going to be doing this thing, right? Yeah, most welcome, man. Yeah, I think being in aviation, there's just so much information out there, and anyhow someone can help you narrow down a decision or think through something is, I found, always useful. So I'm happy to do it for whoever needs. So you're most welcome. Right, now let's see, who did I want to watch? It's so hard. Let's see, have we got to 500? Have we got it? Oh, we're still on 499. Come on, somebody hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Let's get to 500 tonight before the show is over. Listen, send this to your grandma if you have to. Send this to your grandma if you have to. Get them to subscribe to the channel. Okay, get your dog, your cat to subscribe to the channel. I don't care if they don't watch it. We need 500 subs tonight. Please and thank you. We're on 499. We can do it. One more. All right. All that fun to the side. Pilot Debrief has got another video out, and I'm very inclined to watch it. So let's have a watch, shall we? If you guys don't know about Pilot Debrief, you kind of need to get to know. Actually, I would say it's not even a kind of. You definitely need to get to know. He's definitely, from my point of view, got some of the best accident investigation. He's very mindful in how he does it. He's a previous, he used to be a fighter pilot. He's now a commercial pilot. And I think he's got a lot to offer. So let's have a watch, because we like to end the show with some of our favorite aviation YouTubers. It gives me a chance to also learn from others, which is always a blessing. All right, here we go.
5 people boarded an aircraft for what was supposed to be a routine air ambulance flight, but instead it turned into their worst nightmare when a pilot entered a graveyard spiral and the aircraft...
Wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. Were we not just looking at that same aircraft type in the air accident investigation branch bulletin for September, PA 46? Is that the same aircraft he's covering? That's a bit of weird synchronicity. But let's
broke apart in flight, killing everyone on board. Unfortunately, there's no reason this ever should have happened, and that's why I'm going to explain the decisions and the mistakes that were made that led up to this heartbreaking tragedy. I'm Hoover, and welcome to your Pilot Debrief.
Right, quick pause for a question. Do you feel like the same person before and after your PPL? Do you ever think of yourself in third person in disbelief that you are a pilot now? First question, do I feel like the same person? Yes, I would say yes, I do feel like the same person. I think because for me, if you've watched my story, you know that I initially in 2020, I actually lived in my car for over 7 months to fund my flight training. And then I lived with my aunt and slept on her couch for 2 years. And then I managed to get myself a scholarship from the Honorable Company of Air Pilots that allowed me to finish my PPL training. And I'm now on 119 hours. So with that journey, the mental shift happened before the sacrifice, right? It happened before me saying, I'm going to go for it. That's when I just, decided, this dream is worth me giving everything for. There is no discomfort I'm willing to forego to achieve this, right? I will put myself through whatever I need to put myself through to achieve this. So that changed me. The whole thing of going full out for something, knowing that I could fail. I don't know how I'm going to make it, but I know I have to. That changed me. So I would say that person, that version of me, I carried on now with tweaks. But to get to that decision required a huge personality shift. Now it's just been little tweaks. So I do feel like the same person generally with a few tweaks. But what I would say is, do I ever think of myself in third person disbelief? Yeah, because when I think back to my dream of being a pilot as a kid, right? It wasn't necessarily to be an airline pilot. I want to be able to fly an aircraft, take off, land with the aircraft under my control. And I can do that now. And it's crazy. And sometimes, you do get used to it, right? But once you've done it for a little while, you get used to it. But whenever I meet new people and they're like, oh, what do you like to do? Oh, I fly. And they're like, where do you go? Oh, just around. They're like, so what? You go to the airport, get into an airline, and oh no, my bad. my bad. That's not what I do. Basically, I hire an aircraft. I've got a private pilot's license, and like, really, why are you saying it so casually? That's usually the reaction, right? So to me, there is an aspect of it that becomes your norm, but definitely when I'm in the air, like, there's still moments where I pinch myself. I'm like, wait, am I really doing this? Like, this is crazy. Like, this is actually insane. So yeah, that feeling so far has not gone away, even though I have moments of getting used to it, right? So it's not novel anymore, but I do still pinch myself every now and then. So great question. Thank you for your question. Back to pilot debrief.
Our story begins on February 4th, 2023, when a pilot, 2 crew members, and 2 passengers took off from Reno, Nevada to conduct a routine medical transport flight to Salt Lake City, Utah. Now, before we talk about what happened that caused this terrible tragedy, it's important to take a moment to honor the victims. Mark and his wife Terry were the 2 passengers on the flight, and the purpose of the trip was to take Mark to Salt Lake City for life-saving medical treatment. Also on board the plane was Ed, who was 32 years old, and he was the flight nurse. And sitting in the back with him was Ryan, who was 27 years old and the flight paramedic. Finally, Scott was 46 years old, and he was the pilot flying the plane, but we'll talk more about him in a minute. For right now, I think one of the most tragic parts about this entire story is the fact that these were more than just names and faces. Everyone on board that plane was part of a family, and my heart goes out to the spouses, the children, and the loved ones they left behind. This is where I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that every time an air ambulance crew launches, it's not just another flight. You know, these are men and women who have dedicated their lives to responding in the worst conditions to help people on their worst days, and they train for scenarios that most of us would never want to face. And that means sometimes they're accepting a higher level of risk that comes with trying to save others, but that's also why safety is so important when it comes to operating in that type of environment. That being said, before we talk about how they crashed, we need to start by taking a look at the pilot flying the plane.
Try Whoop for free and feel the difference.
Or not, because they're not sponsoring the show, but we'll let it play out so Hoover can get his ad money. All right, I've had enough.
According to the investigation, Scott was about 30 years old when he got his private pilot certificate in 2006, but it wasn't until 12 years later that he obtained his commercial pilot and his instrument rating in 2018. Shortly after that, he became a flight instructor in January of 2019 as he continued to pursue his passion for aviation. Eventually, Scott was hired as a pilot for PSA Airlines in May of 2021, but according to the investigation, he was unable to complete the training program due to some struggles that he had with the pre-departure, climb, descent, and approach procedures. However, in all fairness, according to a friend that went through training at PSA with Scott, a lot of that training structure was disjointed, and even though you would train as a crew, you were split up to take your check ride with someone new, and it seemed like Scott's struggles were more related to operating in a crew environment and just the nature of the check ride itself. Either way, Scott didn't finish training with PSA, and instead he went to work as a Cessna 208 cargo pilot for a company based out of Michigan in November of 2021. And over the course of the next 10 months, Scott gained a lot of experience flying in instrument conditions and cold weather while operating out of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Illinois before he left the company to start work as a PC-12 pilot for a company called Guardian Flight in September of 2022. Now, when Scott was hired, he initially received 4 days of simulator training in the PC-12 for a total of about 7 hours, and then he conducted 5 flights for about 8 hours of instructional flight time before passing his check ride. He then went on to complete 3 days of initial operating experience known as IOE in the aircraft, where he flew 7 legs for almost 8 hours with another pilot and was signed off as being proficient to fly single pilot missions for the company. However, the NTSB discovered that during his initial flight training, he received a grade of unsatisfactory for the autopilot and navigation systems on 2 of his training flights before eventually passing those areas on the last 2 flights. And according to the investigation, at at the time of the crash, Scott had just over 2,100 hours of total flight time, but he had only been working for Guardian for about 5 months, and that meant he only had about 95 hours of experience flying the PC-12 when he crashed. The reason why I'm bringing this up isn't to try and blame Scott, but rather it's to point out how in hindsight we can see all these minor issues starting to add up. We're talking about a pilot that had previous issues operating in a multi-crew environment, that was brand new to the PC-12, that struggled a little with the autopilot during training, and even though he had flown out of Reno a few times before, I'd argue that this was still a new environment for him where he's about to be put to the test. And that brings us to the company he was working for and the aircraft that he was flying.
Okay, so correction, the PC-12 is clearly not a PA-46. My bad. But that's why we're here. I told you, listen, I told you guys, what I'm not going to do is come in here and pretend I know everything. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to show you my ignorance, because the good thing about being, asking a stupid question is once you ask it and it gets answered, you don't have to be stupid anymore. So if you can bear being stupid initially, you get smarter in the end. So that's what I'm doing. So don't judge me. Don't judge me. Do not judge me. Right. Let's talk about the company. The company. Oh. And I keep doing like potentially like fun sounding, fun looking things when we're talking about these kind of things. And I kind of do feel it's inappropriate. So let's take a quick break from that. I just wanted to say cheers. I hope you guys have a great, fantastic week. All right. I'm going to sip on some, I don't know. Is it Ribena? Is it red wine? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't think I could tell you what it is. Anywho.
If you've never heard of Guardian Flight, they're an air ambulance operator that's part of a larger network that provides critical patient transport across the country. But here's the thing, unlike the airlines where you have regular flights in familiar airports, air ambulance operations are usually unpredictable. And that means you could end up being asked to fly in the weather, in mountainous terrain, or in the middle of the night. And sometimes it's in a situation where every second counts. And I'm sure that can sometimes put an enormous amount of pressure on the crew to make the mission happen. And that's why Guardian had a policy known as 3 to go, 1 to say no. That meant the pilot and both crew members all had to agree to operate the flight. And all it took was for one of them to say no to cancel the mission, and the company wouldn't ask any questions. In fact,
I like that policy. I like that. That sounds really clever.
Several pilots told investigators that they liked being able to decline a flight without the fear of punishment, but you need to understand that even with a policy like this, there's still going to be some tension between safety and operations. After all, if you say no, someone else has to cover the flight. And considering the company was already understaffed and the patients are depending on you to make the flights happen, that pressure is real. Additionally, one of the major lessons learned from this investigation was that the NTSB discovered something unique about Guardian's operations. You see, the company also had a policy where anyone with less than a year of experience wasn't allowed to be paired with someone else with less than a year of experience. Unfortunately, as you can see from the memo, this rule only applied to rotor wing operations and not any of the fixed wing flights in the PC-12. And what's crazy to me is that Ed and Ryan have both just finished their 6-month orientation, and they had only been cleared to work 14 days before the accident. In fact, they were so new that they didn't know how to fill out the paperwork for Terry to travel with her husband on the flight. So even though the company policy wouldn't allow them to fly together on a helicopter, there weren't any issues with them being paired together on an airplane. And if you're wondering what this has to do with Scott flying the plane, just remember they had a policy of 3 to go and 1 to say no. But when you're talking about 2 brand new crew members and an inexperienced pilot, they're not going to have the experience to know when to say no. I also want to point out that when it comes to working as a crew, this wasn't Scott's normal base. You see, he was working as a float pilot for Guardian, and that meant that he rotated across their flight bases throughout the country, and he actually arrived in Reno on Monday for a 1-week rotation, and the accident was on Friday. Now that meant Scott didn't have a lot of local area knowledge, and the NTSB couldn't determine how much experience he had operating at night in the weather over mountainous terrain. Additionally, the NTSB discovered that the company required that a flight risk assessment be completed before each flight, but Scott and his crew never completed one. However, for what it's worth, the NTSB also pointed out that considering their lack of experience, even if they had completed that risk assessment, it's possible they still would have done the flight. Either way, this seemed to indicate a possible trend with the company because just 71 days prior to this disaster, another Guardian flight crashed in Hawaii, and that investigation, which I covered in this video on my channel, also revealed the lack of a pre-flight risk assessment. However, now that you know more about Scott, the crew, and the company they were working for, it's time to talk about the aircraft they were flying. Before we talk about what happened next, I just want to take a minute to say that between flying, making debrief videos, makes the guest easy to prepare. All you got to do is poke a few holes in the top and throw it in the menu. Yet, dining options like no extra meals actually, and I don't have to worry about grabbing junk food when I'm short on time. Meals that.
Yeah, I used to order some of these, and then I kind of grew tired of the plastic packaging. So I wonder if there's a company out there that's like exploring different ways of packaging the food, but yeah, plastic is not the one, is it? We already have enough microplastics. But ignore me. If you're interested in that, it's probably only in America. I've never heard of Factor working in the UK. We've got like a few different brands, but anyways, look into it if you're interested.
That fit into my, it's just convenient. Instead of worrying about what to eat, I can .com or click the link below and use the code PILOT.
Okay.
That's right. On the day of the accident, Guardian Flight received a request to transport a patient from Reno to Salt Lake City, and the flight was classified as non-emergency transport. The day shift pilot declined the request due to bad weather and the fact that visibility was below minimums. Towards the end of his shift, that pilot texted Scott to say that the weather had been down all day. In fact, the weather was so bad that another air ambulance company who also flew PC-12s had also received a request to transport that same patient from Reno to Salt Lake City earlier that afternoon, but they also turned down the flight due to the bad weather. Keep in mind that this was for non-emergency transport, so I'd argue that if one air ambulance company tells you that the weather is bad, there's probably no reason to try to make the flight happen by asking another company. And what's crazy to me is that just a few hours later, whoever was making that request went ahead and asked Guardian Flight again to transport the patient. The only difference was Scott was about to start his shift. And even though the dispatchers were required to inform Scott that the request had already been turned down by the day shift pilot and also that it had been turned down by the other company, that never happened. So as far as Scott and his crew were concerned, this was the first request and no one else had rejected the flight prior to this point. Keep in mind that the weather in Reno at that time was light snow with 1 3/4 mile visibility and overcast ceilings at 2,200 feet. And even though that's good enough to take off from Reno, the problem was there was an area forecast for a winter storm in the area predicting heavy snow, low-level wind shear, turbulence, and IFR conditions, not to mention possible icing in the clouds as well. Basically, this is not the kind of weather you want to go flying in as a single pilot at night when you're talking about a non-emergency transport mission.
In an area that you're unfamiliar with. And I think it's quite significant, actually, that they weren't told, because as a newbie, if you hear that other more experienced people have rejected this flight, then you kind of feel less pressure. You kind of go, maybe I'll reject the flight. But if you're not told that information, now it's fully on you. There's the pressure, and the pressure is real. The pressure is real.
Unfortunately, Scott accepted that mission around 7:15 p.m., and eventually around 8:30, everyone was at the aircraft and ready to begin the flight to Salt Lake City. The aircraft they were flying in was a 2002 Pilatus PC-12, and if you're not familiar with this airplane, it's a high-performance, pressurized turboprop aircraft. Thanks to its advanced automation and safety features, the PC-12 is capable of being operated by a single pilot. However, I'd argue that it's probably good to have a second pilot on board, especially when you're transporting patients, sometimes in life or death situations. Because the truth is that when you look at some of the deadliest PC-12 plane crashes, most of those involve single pilot operations. Either way, when it comes to the PC-12 being used for the flight, the aircraft wasn't equipped with a cockpit voice recorder, but the NTSB was able to recover flight data from the Garmin GPS units, as well as the aircraft caution and warning system that helped them better understand what might have happened during the flight. Eventually, they determined that the aircraft was within the weight and balance limits for the flight, and there was nothing mechanically wrong with the aircraft that would have contributed to the crash. That meant it all boiled down to what Scott did during the flight. Around 9 p.m., Scott was ready to go and told to taxi to runway 17 left, but the ground controller noticed that Scott got lost while he was exiting the ramp, and he asked him if he needed any assistance locating the ramp exit. The problem was, even though the visibility wasn't terrible, the taxiway hadn't been plowed in a while, making it hard to see the lines painted on the ground, and the controller had to tell Scott when to begin making his turn until he was finally able to figure out where he was going. A few minutes later, Scott took off around 9 p.m., and after he got airborne, he switched over to talk to departure control, and it was right around that time when, according to the aircraft data, the autopilot disengaged between 1 and 3 minutes after takeoff. It's not clear what caused the autopilot to disengage, but I can promise you that hand flying an instrument departure as a single pilot at night in the weather surrounded by mountainous terrain is not a fun situation to be in, especially during a critical phase of flight like this immediately after takeoff. Either way, thankfully Scott was able to re-engage the autopilot, and right after he did that, the aircraft data reflected that the aircraft de-ice boots cycled and the pusher ice mode was activated, along with the autopilot trim being operated 6 times. Now I want to try to clarify this because I realize it might be confusing, but first of all, the pusher ice mode is a feature of the stall warning system on the aircraft, and it's designed to be used in icing conditions. And basically, when that system is activated, it assumes that there's ice on the wings, so the pilot's going to get a stall warning earlier than normal, so that way they have more time to react. Either way, the NTSB wasn't able to explain what happened here and why the autopilot went offline. We don't know if it was because of turbulence or because of icing, or maybe Scott just knocked it offline. All we know for certain is that there was nothing wrong with the aircraft, and Scott never said anything to the controller about any problems he was having, and he was able to get the autopilot back online really quickly. Also, I just want to point out that this simulation was created using ADS-B data from the aircraft, which is fairly accurate, but the left side of the screen shows you the aircraft ground speed instead of the indicated airspeed, and also more importantly, this simulation doesn't depict the actual weather conditions. So just imagine that Scott isn't able to see anything outside right now because he's in the clouds, and he has to rely on his instruments to stay safe. Either way, this is a copy of the instrument departure that Scott was flying, and when he checked in with the controller, he was told to climb and maintain flight level 250. Scott turned left at EPOS and then began a left turn at WIT to proceed direct to DAT. But a few minutes later, everything started to fall apart. Instead of climbing to flight level 250, as he was passing through 18,000 feet, the aircraft began to level off and started turning to the right. And you can see that according to the flight data, somewhere just prior to or during that turn, the autopilot disconnected again. And my guess is that it happened just prior to the turn, because there's no reason why the aircraft would have started turning to the right or leveled off if the autopilot was still engaged. Once again, we don't know why the autopilot disconnected, but the NTSB concluded that there was definitely nothing wrong with the autopilot that would have kept Scott from using it, but for some reason he never turned it back on. Maybe he just assumed that the system was faulty and that's why he left it off. We just don't know. After he finished his turn back to the left, he started a shallow descent, but then a few moments later, he started climbing as he struggled to control his altitude. And my guess is Scott was probably already disoriented by this point. Now pay close attention to what happened next, because they only had about a minute left to live. A graveyard spiral is a sensory illusion in which a pilot believes they are flying in a wings level descent. However, the airplane is actually in a descending turn. Attempts to arrest the descent by pulling back on the controls have the effect of tightening the turn and losing altitude at an increasing rate until the airplane's structural limits are exceeded, resulting in the aircraft breaking up in flight or impacting the ground. It took roughly 3 minutes from the second time the autopilot disengaged until the time the aircraft broke apart in flight and fell to the ground below, killing everyone on board. Scott's final turn to the right was a classic example of a graveyard spiral that happened after he became spatially disoriented when the autopilot turned off in flight. I also want to point out that the investigation discovered that Scott had a 3-centimeter brain tumor located in the part of his brain that was responsible for the integration of spatial and navigational information, but it wasn't possible to tell if that tumor played a role in the crash. In the end, this wasn't just one mistake, but a whole series of them. An inexperienced pilot and crew, a breakdown in company procedures, and a decision to launch into the weather for a non-emergency flight that had already been turned down by others, and the end result was 5 people lost their lives, and the families they left behind will never be the same. I think the biggest lesson that we can learn from this terrible tragedy is that every flight is a choice, and sometimes the safest, but also the toughest decision is the one to say no. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you want to find out what happened in the other Guardian flight crash, then be sure to check out the other video on the screen, and I'll see you on the next debrief.
Shout out to Hoover from Pilot Debrief. Again, hit the subscribe button on Hoover's Pilot Debrief channel if you haven't already. But I think this brings up an interesting point, you know. As a child, you have your dream to become a pilot. You see aircrafts take off, land, you go on holidays, and you're like, I want to do that one day. You invest tens, if not about 100,000 in total, to become a pilot, potentially. Only to go to the doctors one day and find out that you have a tumor, a brain tumor. I don't know if you guys know Stefan Drury. Apparently he's in London. He's been doing videos in London. But a couple of years ago, he made a video saying that he had a brain tumor, so he had to take a break from flying. I don't know if he's back flying yet. I'm not so sure. But what do you do when you've invested so much into your dream and suddenly you've got a curveball, a health curveball? I have heard of like pilots talking about, obviously I'm not at that stage yet. So I don't rely on, you know, my income doesn't rely on my flying. And I'm actually grateful for that, because if anything should happen to me, I've got at least 2 different industries that I can go into, or, you know, fields of work that I can go into. But what do you do if that's your only source of income and you've invested so much and then you have a medical issue? If you guys don't know the Young Sky Pioneers, I was interviewed by them a couple of weeks ago, and it was released. Young Sky Pioneers on YouTube. If you search Young Sky Pioneers with Dee Limbaya, then that will come up, and you can listen to that interview. I talked to them about my journey. But the founder mentions his challenge where he lost his medical, but he was a student pilot at the time. He lost his medical temporarily. So apparently there is insurance out there that you can have, but I think it's something to bear in mind, you know, because it's one thing to fly for fun, where you're enjoying yourself and brilliant. And even then, obviously, a brain tumor has an impact, and it will prevent you from flying, as well as other health conditions. But if you are investing money and it's your source of income, then that, you know, has different implications, right? But it's kind of the side that we don't like to think about, but still needs to be thought about, because it, you know, what would you do? It's the same as when we're flying, right? You don't want to think about having an engine failure or an engine fire, or you know, having to land in a field, but you better think about it, and you better be prepared should it happen, right? Yeah, you better be prepared should it happen. And so with that same spirit, you know, I would take that on board for myself as well, to think about, you know, What if I can't get that class 1 medical? What if I do get the class 1 medical and then I lose it? And kind of always being prepared. Scouts motto: be prepared. Right, folks, that literally brings us to the end of the episode. To the end of episode 12. It's been 12 weeks on the trot. It's been 12 weeks on the trot. But guys, I would never leave you with nothing. I would never do that, because you guys mean a lot to me. You're helping me to make my dream happen, and I hope I'm in some way contributing to you making your dream happen. So I'll never leave you with nothing. I will leave you with something. Do you know what I'm going to leave you with? Do you know what I'm going to leave you with? Can you take a guess? Can you take a guess what I'm going to leave you with? Any guesses? What will I leave you with? What will I leave you with? What will I leave you with? What do you think? What do you think I'll leave you with? I'll come back and answer that question. There's a question in the chat. I'll come back and answer those. But for now, I'm going to send you here, guys. I've always loved flying.
Hello. Operator. Come on. Well done.
And dancing, there's no denying. If only I could blend the two. I know what I'll do. I'll fly to a new place to dance with a new face. Enjoying the wings a private pilot license brings.
That was a little bit gusty.
Just made a no-fly decision.
Sport conspicuity, 3-course shore.
A different way to our build and advance.
2-0, during downwind.
I call it fly to dance.
Full flaps.
Ooh, nice one.
Flaps come up.
Well, flight, man.
Foxtrot Sierra, welcome to shore.
We have everything in this flight, man.
Everything, bro.
So if you want to see me break a sweat trying to get into Shoreham, that would be the video series to do it. It's on the YouTube channel, Future Pilot 901 on YouTube, and you can just search Flight to Dance. There's playlists there anyway, so you can just have a look. All right, before I go, I'm going to make sure I answer any other questions left in the chat. I do think that we need to be more open about the negatives of being a pilot, 100%. Because look, there's a quote by this guy. He used to be a motivational speaker from like the 70s up until like early noughties, I think, and then he passed away. His name is Jim Rohn, R-O-H-N, Rohn. And he said, look, negative is normal. It's not successful, but it's normal. It's different dwelling on the negatives than considering the negatives. And I think if, becoming a pilot takes so much from you that you'll be doing yourself, and not just yourself, because becoming a pilot has an impact on your family. Even for me, right? Living in my car to pay for flight training, that affected my family, right? Because they had a sense of like, what are people going to think about us? Like, we let our brother, we let our nephew, we let our child, live in their car and talk about it on YouTube as if we're not supporting him. Meanwhile, I put myself through that because I wanted to be responsible for me. I needed the mental transformation of doing that sacrifice, even though I had options to be a bit more comfortable. I needed that challenge, right? Because what I discovered is people who are comfortable have got no speaking of family, my sister's calling me. People who are comfortable have got no reason to move, but people who are uncomfortable have got no choice. 1 second. Yo. Hey, I'm live. Yeah, I'm live. Yeah. live streaming. Live on Kick and YouTube. No, no, no. No, it's cool. Do you want to say hi to people? You want to tell them to live their dream? 1 second, 1 second.
Hi.
Yo, my sister's just joined. What's it like being?
Everyone.
What's it like being my sister? Sister of a crazy guy that chooses to live in his car, even though his family is there and give him options.
It's crazy. Honestly, my little brother is a stubborn guy. When he sets his mind onto something, that's it. You cannot shake it off. He will do what he wants to do as long as he knows it's sound. As long as it's down to him, he's gonna do it.
Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? All right, let me call you back when I'm finishing. It
No
is.
worries.
I'll finish up in a
All
couple
right.
of minutes and I'll call you back.
Okay, in a bit.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Well, there you heard it. Well, there you go. There you go. Talking about them and someone pops up. So yeah, I needed the experience. What was I saying? I've lost my track. I've completely lost my track. I'm not even going to try to find it. But the point being, I completely agree with you. We do have to think about the negatives. It's not successful, but it's necessary because, oh yes, that's the point I was going to make. So my choices actually affected my family, right? When you're a pilot and you're traveling, maybe you're away from home 4 days a week, that affects your family, right? It's going to impact whether you're able to attend certain events, whether you're able to be at certain functions. It has an impact on your family. So it's important not only for yourself to consider the negatives, but also to consider it for the families. And, you know, sometimes people even choose to, either change the airline that they're working for or even step away from aviation as a career simply for the fact that it doesn't work for the family. So yeah, it has to be considered. I think that's super wise. Let's have a look. Yeah, too often people see the top of the pyramid without the bottom. Yep, it was a very, very desperate measure. And I've covered it, quite a bit in other shows and other stuff, so I won't bore people who are aware. But if you wanted to find out more about the reasons behind that and maybe a bit more about that experience, do go and search. Actually, what I'll do is I'll drop you guys the link. I did an interview with Young Sky Pioneers and I went into that. So if you type Young Sky Pioneers, and this better come up, Dee Limbaya. Let's see. Cool. There it is. I'm going to share that. Copy. This is some longer, what you call it, link. Okay, there it is. That's it for you. You can click onto that now if you like. Well, in about a minute's time. And get yourself onto Young Skyneers and find out a bit more about why I made that crazy move. But it's one of those things where I just decided like something had to change, and I had to make my dream happen. But the dream's not done yet. We're still living the dream. By the way, if you want to get yourself in with a chance to win one of these hats, to be put in a draw for one of these hats, then all you have to do is in the chat put in "live your dream," and you could get, or you get to choose which color you want, either my favorite, white, classic black, or cool blue. So all entrants this month will be added to a draw. The draw will happen first episode of October, where a winner will be chosen and they will have the hat of their color of choice sent out to them. So there you go. All right, people. Well, that's it for today. Remember, we are live every Monday, 7 p.m. British summertime. Thank you very much for thank you very much for everyone in the chat. Thank you for watching. Thank you for the subscribers. Did we make it to 500 subscribers? I'm just refreshing. We are one short of 500. So if you're watching this and you're not subscribed on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Give us a like. You're actually supporting the channel hugely. You're supporting my journey hugely by just hitting that thumbs up. Doesn't cost you much, but has a huge impact on my progress and my growth. Thank you. Much appreciated. You have been today's star. Thank you for all the chats, the questions, the thoughts. Pass by again. We like contributors to the show. Thank you. All right, people. Well, you know how it is. I never leave you without inspiration, so one last one. But before I do that, until next time, this is Future Pilot 901, and my name is Dee, reminding you to live your dream. Peace.
Man, from living in my car to finally getting my trial flight done.
Hold it.
To being in this moment. Hey, come on. Well done. Was it worth the sacrifice? Oh man.
Golf X-ray.
Pull back. May pull back more. Hold it there. Pull back.
Switching to Southern radar 130.
Bit more.
Listen. Was it worth the sacrifice?
So, power right on. Center line.
Listen, if you have a dream, it's down to you to make it happen, man. You might give it everything and it might still not work, but guess what? The journey makes you a better, stronger person. Can you imagine what kind of person you would become if you didn't pursue the one thing that you thought was the best thing in the world? You didn't pursue it. What kind of person does that make you after 20, 30 years of doing that? But when you chase what you believe is the most valuable, the most beautiful, the most awesome thing that you can do, and you give it everything, win or lose, you become a better person.